wanted to talk a little bit about the colorful column challenge and some of the strategies that you guys noticed and some that will work well if you struggled with the challenge on the first time through. So I think most groups realized that density was going to be important in this challenge, that you wanted the most dense layer to be at the bottom because it would tend to sink, and then kind of a medium density layer in the middle, and then a low density layer at the top. So one thing that usually came about after some discussion is that the top layer doesn't really need to have sugar. There's no rule that each layer had to have sugar. So to make it the least dense, you want your top layer to be water only. That means your bottom and middle layer need to have some sugar, but they need to have a difference. The sugar is more dense than water. So if you add more sugar to the solution, you make it more dense. The key on that is you might as well make the lowest layer as dense as possible. That means you want a saturated solution of sugar water. You want to have so much sugar in there that you really can't add any more. At least if you do, it won't dissolve. So I knew that I wanted that layer to be as dense as possible, and I also wanted to be somewhat quantitative. So I wanted to make some measurements that would help with that. So I decided to start in my Erlenmeyer flasks with 75 milliliters of water, and I wanted to slowly add sugar to my saturated, most dense layer until it really either didn't dissolve anymore or took a really long time to dissolve, even with swirling. What I did to measure the amount of sugar, it's a little bit non-standard, but I used a beaker and I filled it up to the 80 milliliter mark. That way I would know once I reached the saturated point in the most dense layer, the bottom layer, I would know how much sugar I added. I found that the level went from 80 milliliters to about 50 in creating that saturated solution. And you can see also that the volume went up. I started with 75 milliliters of water, but the dissolved sugar adds some volume to the solution. So it went from 80 to 50, so I knew that I added about 30 milliliters of sugar, and I wanted to do half that for the middle layer. So again, I started with 75 milliliters, and then I knew I wanted my target to be about 15 milliliters of sugar. That way I would have a layer that's somewhat intermediate. And then from there, it was all about technique. So you see there's a lot of things going into chemistry. There's concepts. The concept of density is important here. There's measurement, right? If you're able to make some quantitative numerical measurements, that usually helps you in chemistry. And then there's technique. And that was something that you guys got better at with each trial, using the pipette to carefully add the right amount of each solution to each layer. Maybe putting the pipette tip close to the layer that you're depositing it on. I'm going to show you a technique that I didn't know about until I did some searching online. Let me see if I can show you this. So I know that I want my dense layer in the bottom, but there's a trick that I learned that you can actually put the least dense layer in first. So I'm going to go with the pure water. I'm not going to bring a ton of solution into the pipette, and I'm actually depositing the least dense layer first. I'll get a little bit more. And then what I want to be the middle layer, I'll pipette some of that. And again, I wouldn't expect this to work, but I found it online. If you put the pipette down into the bottom and slowly deliver it, the more dense layer will stay on the bottom. I don't want to put too much air in there. Let me get a little bit more. And by delivering that to the bottom, they don't mix very much. And then my most dense layer is going to go on the bottom. Again, I'm going to put the pipette down to the bottom of the test tube and deliver that dense pink layer. And you can see I have nice separation of the layers there. There was a little bit of mixing between the green and yellow, but that is a good technique that you can try if you had trouble pipetting it the other way.